its own earnings, not by stealing money, not by creating fake companies, but by quietly changing when the truth appeared, at a time when the world was still recovering from corporate scandals like Enron and WorldCom. Another giant was exposed. This time, at the heart of America's housing system. This is the story of Fannie Mae and how billions in trust were shaken by a carefully engineered illusion. Fannie Mae wasn't just another company. It was a cornerstone of the U.S. financial system. Created to support the housing market, it helped millions of Americans achieve homeownership by buying mortgages from banks and providing liquidity to the system. Fannie Mae became essential to the economy. It wasn't just big, it was too important to fail. By the early 2000s, Fannie Mae had grown into a financial powerhouse, handling trillions of dollars in mortgage assets, generating consistent profits, and maintaining the image of stability in an unpredictable market. Investors trusted it, regulators relied on, and executives were rewarded for its performance. At the top of the organization were powerful executives, leaders who understood one critical reality of Wall Street. Consistency is everything. Missing earnings targets, even slightly, could damage confidence, and in a company like Fannie Mae, confidence was everything. So instead of risking volatility, they chose control. The strategy wasn't about creating fake revenue. It was more subtle, more controlled, and far harder to detect. Executives began smoothing earnings, shifting expenses between quarters, delaying losses, accelerating gains, not changing the total money, but changing when it appeared. On paper, everything looked stable. Quarter after quarter, profits appeared consistent, predictable, reliable, exactly what investors wanted to see. But beneath that stability, the truth was being adjusted, and internally, pressure continued to build. Meeting expectations wasn't optional. It was expected. Bonuses depended on it. Reputation depended on it. And in some cases, careers depended on it. The manipulation allowed executives to hit bonus targets, to maintain the illusion of perfect financial management, and to present a company that never surprised the market. Because in finance, surprises are dangerous. At first, the changes were small, technical, justified internally as timing differences, but over time, they grew, and eventually, the impact reached around $200 million, not large enough to collapse the company, but significant enough to distort reality. It wasn't a sudden collapse. It was a slow distortion, one that built quietly. Inside one of the most trusted institutions in America, a fraud that didn't scream, but whispered. Then came the scrutiny. Regulators began asking questions. Accounting practices were reviewed, and inconsistencies started to emerge. Some internal warnings had already surfaced, concerns about accounting methods, questions about controls, but they were overlooked or ignored. The Office of Federal Housing Enterprise Oversight launched an investigation. They examined Fannie Mae's books, its accounting methods, its internal controls, and what they found was deeply concerning. The company had not been reporting its earnings accurately. It had been manipulating the timing of expenses, smoothing results to create an artificial sense of stability, and misleading investors about its true financial performance. The revelation sent shockwaves through the market, because this wasn't just any company. This was Fannie Mae, a pillar of the housing system, a symbol of financial trust. The consequences followed quickly. Executives were removed, leadership changed, and the company was forced to restate its earnings. Billions of dollars in financial statements had to be corrected. Confidence was shaken, not destroyed, but deeply questioned. The scandal also triggered a broader response. Regulatory oversight increased, accounting rules were tightened, and scrutiny over government-sponsored enterprises intensified. Lawmakers demanded answers, regulators strengthened controls, and the industry was forced to reevaluate its standards. But perhaps the biggest impact was psychological. Because Fannie Mae wasn't hiding losses in secret accounts, it wasn't creating fake revenue streams, it was doing something far more subtle. It was reshaping reality. Just enough to avoid suspicion, and that made it even more dangerous, because if manipulation can exist without obvious fraud, it becomes harder to detect, harder to question, and easier to repeat. And the timing of this scandal mattered, because just a few years later, the global financial crisis would shake the housing market to its core, and institutions like Fannie Mae would once again be at the center of attention, which raises an even deeper question. If warning signs were already there, could more have been prevented? The company survived, it continued operating, and remained a critical part of the U.S. housing market. But the scandal left a permanent mark, a reminder that even stability can be manufactured today in a world of complex financial systems, high-speed trading, and global markets. The lessons of Fannie Mae still matter, because not all fraud looks dramatic, not all deception is obvious. Sometimes it's hidden in timing, in small adjustments, in numbers that look perfectly normal. So what do you think? Was Fannie Mae protecting its image or deliberately misleading the world? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, because in finance, truth isn't just about numbers, it's about timing. And when timing is manipulated, reality itself can be rewritten, because sometimes the most dangerous frauds are the ones that look completely normal. For more such knowledge, subscribe and hit the bell icon.